Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Steven Brown, and in today's video, guys, we're going to be going over Kyle Dubas's recent press conference. Because there was a lot of interesting things that were said in that press conference that's going to affect next year's roster. Now, I know how keen some of you are on adding another defenseman before the season starts, and I just want to say they could go out and add a defenseman mid-season, no problem, in and around the trade deadline. But just a little bit of an update on Weegar here. According to his agent, things are going disappointing, and a deal isn't close, and a trade could be the end result, even with the November 8th arbitration hearing scheduled. But Dubas said that they don't anticipate on needing to shed any more players to create cap room, says that the Leafs may use a 20-player roster at times this season. Now, Dubas also kind of pointed out that the Maple Leafs are more or less done for the offseason, but never say never because things always change. But he also said that he doesn't anticipate needing to shed any more players to create cap room, and he also says that the Leafs may use a 20-player roster at times this year. And that idea kind of goes with the all-Canadian division and what the American Hockey League might be doing this season. Because with border travel being almost a no-no for the next little while, the Canadian government is basically forcing the NHL to have an all-Canadian division, or those are the words that Chris Johnson on the most recent edition of the Steve Dangle podcast used anyway. That is more than likely going to happen. And an idea that Chris kind of floated out there is that while the Leafs are traveling, let's say they're playing a game in Vancouver, then the AHL team for the Vancouver Canucks and the Toronto Maple Leafs would also play on the same day. The whole point of the American Hockey League, yes, it is a professional league, but it's a developmental league first. I don't care if the Toronto Marlies have to play the Utica Comets 10 times next season, just get them playing games against each other so Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren and the rest of the Maple Leaf prospects, or other teams' prospects, have somewhere to play. And if your American Hockey League team is always traveling with you, then why would you keep guys as healthy scratches? You would just send them down and call them up as you needed them. Hence, the brilliancy behind just using a 20-player roster. So what does this mean for the Maple Leafs roster? If they're only carrying 20 players here, that means everyone who is not exempt from waivers is more than likely going to be concretely cemented on this team. Anyone who is then exempt from waivers is going to be on this taxi squad, and they are going to be shuttled up and down from the American League to the NHL as the Maple Leafs need them. Remember, if the team is traveling with the Leafs, they can do that. But if we're looking at the Maple Leafs' cap-friendly page here, basically everyone with a green arrow here are exempt from waivers. Nick Robertson, we will touch on a little bit later in the video. I don't think Mikko Leighton is going to be on the taxi squad, but guys like Rasmus Sandin, Pierre Engvall, and if we scroll down to the non-roster guys here, guys like Barabanov, Korshkov, and even Philip Hallander, Timothy Liljegren even, those are all guys that we're going to see on the Maple Leafs' taxi squad, I guess. Your American Hockey League team is going to be traveling with you more than likely. If you need some fresh legs, call one of those guys up if there's a back-to-back or 3 games in 4 nights, or even 3 games in 5 nights. And the really interesting thing about carrying a 20 or a 21-man roster and having those players so accessible to you with them traveling with you basically everywhere you go is that you can keep them in the American Hockey League, not have their cap hits count against the salary cap, and you can accumulate more cap space in season, which will give you more flexibility to work with at the trade deadline. But Kyle, you think you're slick, but you're not, because I caught you here. Because if the Maple Leafs are going to attempt to carry a 20-man roster, well, if they sign Travis Dermott is not going to be exempt from waivers. So that means in order for the Maple Leafs to carry a 20-man roster here, assuming they sign Travis Dermott before the season starts, that means they gotta trade someone. So Mr. Dubas, you are in fact not done. Even if they sent Robertson down, who is exempt from waivers, they would need another forward to replace him, and that would still leave them with a 21-man roster if both Dermott and Holl are on this. Like we pointed out earlier in the video, yes, Mikko Leighton is exempt from waivers, but it would be absolutely lunacy to send him down just to have a 20-man roster and Dermott and Holl on there as well. So once again, Mr. Dubas, you thought you were slick, but you're not that slick. You're going to have to make another move here. Just sitting here editing the video and the thought kind of popped into my mind. The way that they could make a 20-man roster work without making any trades is if they planned on using 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. They wouldn't need to trade one of Justin Holl or Travis Dermott, but they still would need to send someone down in the armchair GM that I had up on the screen. And the only one there that would be exempt from waivers would be Nick Robertson. Hypothetically here, because now we know that the Maple Leafs are comfortable just having a 20-man roster, if they traded both Travis Dermott and Justin Holl and re-signed Mikheyev to a $1.5 million deal, they would have about $3.5 million in cap space to go out there and get another defenseman to either play next to Jake Muzzin or Morgan Rielly, depending on where TJ Brodie slots in. Which brings me back to this. Mackenzie Weegar reportedly wanted about $3 million from the Florida Panthers, and they're in this predicament because they do not want to pay him. Yes, they do have enough cap space to go out there and get him. But like I said, Weegar is 26, turning 27, and if he signs a one-year deal or is awarded one via arbitration, that means he will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of next season, so you have to temper what you're willing to give up for this player because he might just be a rental. Having gotten that out of the way, I would say that's pretty damn good detective work by me there. Now, touching on Nick Robertson, if he's not with the Toronto Maple Leafs to start the season, he would have to go back to the Canadian Hockey League, but the Canadian Hockey League is still not really sure how they're going to be putting things together. The Quebec League is playing right now with full contact, but the Ontario League, they're not sure, and I do believe that they have a team in the United States. I believe that the Erie Otters are just outside of Ontario. I believe the Flint Firebirds are also in Michigan. And they've been talking about running their league with no physical contact, so no hitting, and that's kind of absurd. So you'd have to imagine that the NHL steps in here and lets players who are 19 years old or younger play with the American Hockey League this season just because, for their development's sake. And there was also this that was reported a couple of days ago. Mikheyev is in at 1 year, $2.7 million, but the Leafs are in at 2 years, $1 million, and they'll more than likely meet at the middle. Friedman reported it before. The Maple Leafs would like to get this guy at $1.5 million on either a 1 or a 2 year deal. And I believe his arbitration case is scheduled in the next couple of days. And there was this little quote from the Joe Thornton press conference where Thornton really did praise Frederik Andersen. And I mean, I know I took a little bit of heat for saying what I did about Frederik Andersen in my last video, but you need to be able to look at last season and be able to admit that the Leafs were bad on defense and Frederik Andersen was also quite awful. But I understand how it's hard to rebound when you're in a rut, when the team in front of you is not so good. So like I said, at the end of last video, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt this time around here. But I can imagine why Joe Thornton would say that about Frederik Andersen. I mean, they both did play in the Pacific Division for a while. Frederik Andersen with the Anaheim Ducks, Joe Thornton with the San Jose Sharks, of course. In 16 games against the Sharks, Frederik Andersen has a 6-8-1 record. Not very good, but a .924 save percentage. So yeah, I can understand why Joe would say that about him. But make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, the Leafs aren't done here.